We are now recording.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the AMS breakout session. I am Lori Warren Cashman, can't even say my own name, from AMS Dairy Program, and I will be moderating this session. We have several presenters, so please hold your questions until the end or type them in the chat window, and we will try to get to them all at the end of the presentation. If you would like to ask your question at the end, you can use the raise hand feature and I will call on you. Today we will be talking about international markets of interest and areas of collaboration, Mars and My Market News updates, and our voluntary poultry and egg reporting. And I'm going to turn this over to Terry Long, who is the Specialty Crops Market News Director and for the international markets of interest and areas of collaboration.
Okay, thank you, Lori. We're going to focus on three areas here: international markets of interest and areas of collaboration, commodity markets that we capture and make available to the public in AMS Market News, our partnerships and aligned efforts to enhance information availability, and again, to improve the quality and availability of information, and then also some of our efforts on information products and data visualization tools. These shared efforts and partnerships have led to the development of information products and tools that benefit everyone. So let's move on to the next slide then. We're going to look at the three market news programs that are actively involved in tracking or reporting international markets. I'll speak first for specialty crops market news, and then I'll call on my colleagues. So next slide is specialty crops market news. So for the specialty crop sector in the United States, over half of our consumption is imported. So for the specialty crop sector, the international market and the supply of products coming into our own markets are very, very important. So specialty crop market news tracks these import markets for over 200 commodities. Again, these are products that are typically coming into our country on a seasonal basis. In other words, the opposite time that our products would be available. We're also tracking wholesale produce markets in selected key locations, Rotterdam, Toronto, Mexico cities as examples, and imports and crossings from Mexico and Canada. Imports from all countries, crossings are Mexico and Canada because we share borders. We are currently capturing movement on over 700 products, and we're showing import volumes from over 75 countries. Next slide, please. One of the things that we recently created at the request of the Office of the United States Trade Representative and the Office of the Secretary of USDA was a new report to focus on the new agreement that followed up on NAFTA, and that's the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. This particular report is a weekly narrative on market conditions for the selected high-value traded imported products relevant for the three countries in North America. We have an aggregated view of specific data sets that are referenced in the agreement for those products, and then graphic visualizations of that price and movement trends for those key products covered in the agreement. Next slide, please. The one thing I did want to mention about that new report there, and before I call on our colleague here, is that we created that report, as I mentioned, at the request of the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, but we have already found that that report could be a good model for us in looking at other regions and other trade agreements and their impact on the U.S. So thank you. And for our colleagues from dairy, I wanted to give the floor to Butch Speth. Butch, please. Butch is the director of Dairy Market News. Thanks, Butch.
Yeah, thank you, Terry.
Thank you for letting me share about the dairy market news and our efforts here in the international markets. Dairy market news started reporting international markets in around 1992. At that time, the U.S. presence in the world market for dairy was rather limited, in the neighborhood of single digits. To today, as an exporter, the milk from 1 out of 7 cows is going into the international market. So the market awareness and market participation has definitely increased for U.S. Dairy processors. We publish 15 different reports on the international markets. These are bi-weekly reports. Out of Europe, there's pricing and market information on butter, butter oil, skim milk powder, whey, and whole milk powder. And out of Oceania, which is Australia and New Zealand, reports on butter, cheese, skim milk powder, and whole milk powder. And plus we pick out of that region also the Global Dairy Trade Report, which reports pricing on a plethora of dairy products. And then most recently, in the last couple of years, we've added South America, including skim milk powder and whole milk powder. And also just a regional overview reports for those areas, what's happening currently in the market conditions. So collectively, these areas, with the United States included, account for over 80% of the milk and dairy products that are exported to other countries. So definitely an area of consideration. Next slide, please. I could just talk about, some of the things that we do. Like I mentioned, we included pricing in there, but the pricing changes too are indicative of what's happening currently. We report on the market tone, what's changing, talk about localized production and stock trends. And, even with the marketing, production, there's different trends in different countries. You're all aware too that Australia, New Zealand kind of counter-cyclical to the United States for production because of just location in the world. We talk about anything that's affecting supply and demand factors and any complementary products that could be affected, for example, like lactose and the skim milk powder market for standardization. And also anything else that's happening in the markets. We'll pick up any production statistics from any government organizations, but in stocks and the exports also. But sometimes we find that information is lacking. I mean, we find information kind of the old-fashioned way. We talk to people. We do scour the internet looking for any other statistics, any other contacts, any thing to keep track of the news that's currently happening. Anything like changes in quota. Things like EU news that's happening, losing a country, that can have a big impact on, some of the information that's out there. And just things like, interventions, embargoes, weather, big factor. And I think currently, some of the big considerations for some of these markets is countries that are getting back to, whatever the current normal is, some of the pandemic issues that have happened, and also just big news now is just like shipping and container shortages in the United States and throughout the world. Information for dairy market news and your other market news programs available on our AMS website. Data and prices are available on the My Market News site, and also data is available through the API. So with that, I will pass it along to Jim Bernal. Did he make it on?
Thanks, Butch. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak for a few minutes about livestock, poultry, and grain market news. We have several reports that provide international data for imports, exports, as well as a few reports that display market information from our neighboring countries of Mexico and Canada, along with a few prices from Japan. Although this is not a comprehensive list, it does provide a snapshot of some of the multiple international markets that Market News reports. International data is collected multiple ways through voluntary and mandatory reporting. collaboration with USDA agencies, or outside agricultural organizations such as Agriculture and Ag Food Canada. Some of the import data that we have includes live mandatory reporting for both cattle and swine that comes in as purchase reports in the morning, identifying those animals that have come across the border. We also do imported beef and feeder cattle from Mexico and feeder pigs from Canada. We also include live animal imports from Canada and imported meat passed for entry into the US. Data is from the FSIS system, compiled and reported through Livestock, Poultry, and Grain Market News. This contains fresh and processed beef, fresh and processed pork, veal, goats, lamb, mutton, and poultry. Next slide, please. For export data, we're including information that we report on pork, but it does not include NAFTA. The reports are the 640 and the 641. Beef, we include total loads for exports overseas and NAFTA. Report is the 463. The note on the beef and the pork is to identify that pork written several years after the box beef reporting was started. NAFTA is considered domestic, while for beef and other commodities, that is not the case and it is considered export. Also, some use our reports to compare the data from FAS, how they are different and will not yield the same results or volumes. Export to Canada includes cattle, hogs, sheep, goats, horses, and exotics, data collected at the border, and the national mechanical separation of chickens. Next slide, please. Other international information that we report on is Canadian livestock prices and federally inspected slaughter, sourced from CanFax and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We also report on the Canadian egg market, live poultry slaughtered under federal inspection in the US and Canada, weekly major wholesale markets in the Mexico City chickens, and the Japanese, we report on the slaughter supply and demand reports and retail prices. Those are sourced from ALIC. And I will pass it back to Terry.
Thanks, Butch. Thanks, Jim. I wanted to talk here about the partnerships and aligned efforts to enhance market information availability that we as AMS Market News are engaged in. One of them is a partnership with the Market Information Organization of the Americas, MIOA. This is a cooperation network or a network of cooperation of 33 nations made up of the market news-like institutions in these nations of the hemisphere, the Northern Hemisphere, Western Hemisphere. The purpose of this group, this 33 member nation, is to facilitate the timely and consistent exchange of reliable agricultural market information to the benefit of all of the nations of the Americas. In other words, this is a concept, market information is a public good for all nations. MIOA, the Market Information Organization of the Americas, was an initiative of AMS, and AMS does serve as the chair. Next, please. So some of the activities that we've been doing in alignment with MIOA is the development of shared information products within the Americas, and we'll show some of those briefly. And we, as AMS Market News, have been coordinating technical training for information specialists, again, attempting to improve the uniformity and the quality of information that's available to all of us. Next, please. Speaking of that MIOA, as I said, AMS serves as the chair. Our technical secretariat is the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IECA. So again, AMS is serving as a chair, IECA is the technical secretariat, and 33 nations of the Americas are members. Now, these efforts of sharing information and aligning activities and learning from one another are have benefits and challenges. So I wanted to talk briefly about the challenges here. There are both long-term and episodic changes within these international partners. Staff or even the organizations themselves can change suddenly. In other words, the people we worked with last year may no longer be in that organization. We have to renew relationships. As a result, previous training programs and development programs may either be canceled or we trained people that are no longer there. Also, the resources made available to the market information systems and the government support is often limited. And then we're talking about 33 nations, so there are divergent marketing practices and different commodities of importance. So those are all challenges for us to work with these 33 nations or the other 32 nations. Next, please. And of course, there are advantages. We, as Market News, have been in business for soon to be 106 years. We are widely perceived to be the gold standard around much of the world, certainly, in agricultural market information system. So for us to have a direct influence on processes and procedures leads to a better product that we all can access. And also, as we are market information specialists in AMS, this gains us an awareness of what's going on in the marketplace, or in these country trends. Butch talked about some of that for the work they do. This presents an opportunity for AMS Market News to lead harmonization. We work at this within our own borders a lot to harmonize how we define and identify products, and gives us an opportunity as AMS Market News to lead that harmonization across the entire hemisphere. And also it gives us exposure to new information products and tools for data visualization that either our customers can benefit from, or perhaps something that we can copy or emulate. Next, please. I talked about the these joint efforts and some of the products that came from them. One of the regions of OEMA, there are 5 regions. The central region has worked with on a food and agriculture organization supported platform, CIMAGRO. So the nations of the central region or Central America are jointly using this platform as MIOA members for data visualization. They typically have their own data systems outside of that, but for joint data visualization for the entire region, they use this product, CIMAGRO. Also, an effort we worked on in the many years we've been together are building these product catalogs. Again, the central region was first. They so far have 39 products, which are very detailed product descriptions, names, trade characteristics within their region and countries. And then lastly, we as regions of MIOA are starting to combine our reporting and efforts to have these regional reports. What's happening in Southern or in South America, in the Southern Cone of the Americas, what's happening in the Caribbean region, what's happening in the Andean region. Shared information for the benefit of all of their buyers and sellers, growers and traders. Next, please. Talking about shared efforts or aligned efforts, we've been partnering always with the industry to identify the products for which we need better information or more transparency. In this case, we're talking about the volume of imports into this country for products that might be considered minor. But for our sectors, they need this greater clarity. So we've been aligning with our partners in Canada. So we're submitting these requests to the International Trade Commission in the United States to have these codes added to allow us to capture the data more clearly and make it publicly available. So we've been comparing and aligning our submissions between the US and Canada to have the greater chance of success, to improve the quality of information to both of our sectors. And obviously for Canada and the US, those sectors are very closely aligned. So next, please. And these are the websites from the various programs, the new My Market News website, and then each of the market news programs: cotton and tobacco market news, dairy market news, specialty crop market news, livestock, poultry, and grain market news, and then also the website for our partners, the Market Information Organization of the Americas, or MIOA. And with that, I would give the floor back to Lori, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Terry. Our next presenter is going to be Jason Carwell, and he'll be talking about Mars and My Market News. Jason, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon again. My name is Jason Carwell. I am currently working with AMS Market News Divisions on a multi-year project to update the IT systems and the processes that we utilize to make USDA market news information available to our public customers. We have been providing updates on this project during the past data users meetings over the last few years. We want to take some time today to provide another brief update of the progress. For those of you that are not familiar with this project, we are currently in the process of updating all the internal IT systems we use to collect, aggregate, and analyze voluntary market news data that we collect and report on, as well as the external sites and an API that we utilize to make all that data available to our public customers. The website for the voluntary data is called My Market News, and we also have a similar system for the mandatory market news data, and that information is on our Data Mart website and is also available for public consumption through an API. Over the past few years, we've transitioned a large number of our voluntary market reports and data sets to My Market News site, and they are available for public consumption through our API. We currently have close to 700 reports and unique voluntary data sets available on My Market News, as well as over 125 mandatory reports and unique data sets available on Data Mart. For those interested in full lists of these reports and data sets, they're all available on those websites, and most of those links have been provided in this presentation. Over the past 6 months since the last data users meeting, we've been focusing primarily on development in the voluntary system. We've released a few things out to the public. We now have commodity data in our system for specialty crops trends. The specialty crops truck rate data should be starting as soon as next week. We also have released data, additional data on the dairy CME reports, and we've also started to make the weekly data, the cotton quality data files available for public consumption on the My Market News site. We are continuing to work towards completing the task of transitioning the rest of our reports and data over to the new system and we currently have on our old data portal, while ensuring that all currently available functionality and data will be available in the new system as well. Another update that we've released out in the last 6 months is some improved functionality for identifying and consuming corrected reports and corrected data sets. There's been functionality added to the web API index pages to assist users in identifying reports that have been republished or corrected. We've also added functionality to the My Market News and the LMR APIs to help users identify corrected data sets in the API and to consume that specific corrected data. Instructions and additional information on these updates are available both on the My Market News website as well as Data Mart. As Mike Lynch mentioned in his introduction earlier, other commodity market types that we're currently nearing completion will be released to our production site in the coming months, include the livestock and poultry reports and data sets for feedstuffs, retail, national feeder cattle summary, bioenergy, international imports and exports, The dairy retail commodities will also be one that's going to be coming soon. And for specialty crops, we would expect truck rates very soon. And in the coming months, we'll be seeing terminal market, shipping point, retail, and movement. We are currently finishing the final development work to ensure that we are providing all the functionality available to users that our current system has, and we're expecting all this to be transitioned over within the next few months. Other item that was mentioned earlier is we are planning to make available in the future a mobile app for both Android and iOS that will allow users to download the reports and data that we currently have available, but onto mobile devices. The apps have a lot of functionality that is available on the websites, but will be much more usable on smaller devices. In the next few months, we hope to be making the announcements of when we'll be able to start releasing a first version of those apps out to the public with some sample reports, with plans to make all of our data available through those medias as time permits over the next year or so. As we move ahead, we'll be attempting to provide all the updates to this project and anything we're releasing out to the public through Gov Delivery and notices to the trade. We'll also be keeping updates on My Market News and the Data Mart websites to ensure that users are aware of what's coming. We are always available to answer any questions that our customers and users have, and we can provide documentation through email, or we can set up calls that demonstrate any functionality that there are questions on or users are having trouble with. And our contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation and also available on all of our websites. Thank you.
Okay, now Lakeisha Aller is going to talk about the voluntary poultry and egg reporting. So Lakeisha, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. Today, I'm here to talk about what's happening with our poultry and egg reporting services at Market News. Currently, we are working to transition our poultry and egg reports to our My Market News platform, like many commodities before us. This transition will help us localize and streamline data and enhance the customer experience to ultimately provide a competitive marketplace. It will also allow Market News to reform its reporting services to be more efficient and to help create market intelligence tools that are more available and useful to our customers. With My Market News, we'll be able to convert all of our existing poultry and egg reports over to the new user-friendly PDF format to promote report consistency, information clarity, and easier viewing on multiple devices. In addition, the platform will also allow us to provide customers with API capabilities that can be used to create custom reports, data sets, and visualizations. This transition has also given us an opportunity to work with industry closely to improve and modernize our poultry and egg reports to help these evolve with technology and industry advancements. Many of these improvements that have been identified involve changes to report frequency and consolidation of existing reports to the new PDF format. Market News is also trying to use the technology from the platform, its capabilities to help us build for future changes and new reports. More information will obviously be shared as we get closer. Right now, it's estimated that many of these changes will probably go into effect either winter 2021 or spring of 2022 at best for right now. Next slide, please. To illustrate some of these changes, we'll just break them down by commodity. For egg reporting, we plan to shift our daily egg reports to a weekly basis to help us better reflect what current trade activity is actually taking place and to help create more robust reports. The two largest changes involve our regional and spot market trade reports. With regard to our regional reports, we plan to combine and consolidate our daily egg reports, such as the daily Midwest egg, the daily South Central egg, daily California egg, and various others, to a single weekly report in conjunction with our combined regional egg report. This change will allow for easier side-by-side viewing and analysis, and also reflect the weekly pricing changes that are taking place out there. Furthermore, other area markets will be reported into appropriate regions. For instance, New England eggs will be reported in the Northeast region, and North Carolina eggs will be reported in the Southeast region. However, it's important to note that our New York egg reports will continue as they are now, except for be updated to the new format. This report will be dynamic in nature. Many of the reports will be dynamic, which means that if there's trading, this trading will show, and if there's no trading, then those lines of data won't show at that particular time. Likewise, with our spot market trade reports, we plan to combine all of these spot market trade reports, such as the trailer load egg sales or the national shell egg price or index price report, into a single daily report that's more robust, reports regularly, and allows us to expand trading in future. In addition, breaking stock prices from the eastern and central regions would be nationalized and reported alongside these spot shell egg prices. And if possible, spot egg product pricing and trading would also report on this report alongside these shell egg spot prices. Again, this report would be dynamic. All remaining reports, such as the national retail egg purchases or national egg products reports, would continue as they are, but just in the updated PDF format. With regard to chicken reporting, the largest shift is primarily going to be the consolidation of our daily chicken reports to a single weekly report, which will allow for a more robust report series, not as many two-feeder reports, and it will also allow us to expand on our parts reporting. The biggest change will be the nationalization of all of our parts reports into a single quote. This would include reports such as the Northeast broiler fire parts, Southern states broiler fire parts, and the Midwest broiler fire parts report. This change would also allow us to expand our parts reporting to include additional cuts, sizes, refrigeration types, and destinations not currently shown. Again, this report would be dynamic. Other remaining reports, like the National Broiler Market at a Glance report or the weekly National Fowl report, would continue as is with the new PDF format. Next slide, please. For turkey reporting, it's not a lot of big shifts here, but a little bit. We plan to take our daily parts report and combine it into a weekly report, and this trading would report alongside our whole turkey trading as well. This change allows us to include additional parts cuts that are not on the body of the report with the cut lines. At this time, we pick up quite a bit of trading on some various parts, but it winds up going into the comment section that isn't actually on the cut lines. So in future, we plan to put that information into those cut line sections and go from there. Again, this report would also be dynamic. Other turkey reports, such as the National Turkey Market at a Glance, this would continue. And again, it would be updated to the new user-friendly PDF format. And last but not least, miscellaneous reporting. Noteworthy changes here primarily include the consolidation of our reports to a single weekly report. The biggest change would be nationalizing our rabbit and duck reporting so that we would be able to show more trading happening in the United States outside of San Francisco and the central region respectively. Again, these reports would be dynamic. Other reports, such as the pasture-raised poultry report or our organic and poultry and egg report, these would continue but be updated to the new PDF format. And this sums up all of the changes that we've got planned for right now. So I'm going to kick it back to Lori for, I'm assuming, questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakeisha. We've had a few questions come in the Q&A box, so I will start with those. And then time permitting, I will check for anybody that would like to ask the question live. So the first question we received was from Bruno Arthur. I'm thinking any one of the directors might be good for this one, but where do I find the data of all publicly traded firms interacting with USDA AMS?
Well, I can start answering that, and anybody else can chime in to fill in any gaps, because Bruno has a couple follow-on questions in that same line. I'll try to answer at the same time. Basically, the information that companies provide us, we are obligated to protect that and protect the identity of the participants who provide information to us. There are some statutory prohibitions on sharing individual company data or names of contacts and such for the information we provide. So to your follow-on question of what you would hope for and having us be able to identify these companies and supply and demand for their products, that's not the purpose of market news, to provide information on individual companies. Our mission is to provide a picture of what's going on in the industry, not just by company. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Plus, the one other thing I will say is that, we are, anything that a company gives us that they wouldn't normally provide in the normal, to the public or on their website in the normal course of doing business, any private information they give us, that's protected information we're obligated to keep confidential. We aggregate it with similar data in a way that we can publish it that does not identify who was providing that information.
Thanks, Mike. Our next question is for Butch. This one is from Jerry Cessna. It seems that it would be good to publish export prices for Western Europe cheese. Have you had some thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, great question, Jerry. And maybe this will go towards a larger question. That's like, well, how does dairy market news, how does market news in other areas expand what they report, or maybe drop what they no longer report? And we're always looking for areas to expand. We have just to make sure it is reportable. Can we talk to enough people to get the information? Is there enough of a standardized product? So we're constantly looking at that, and it does start with somebody making the ask a lot of times. And as a product evolve, if we see growing numbers. So I know Mike Lynch mentioned in the main session, market news is doing a survey of data user survey. So that's a great option to say, that's our customer satisfaction survey, just state correctly. It's a great place to put down requests for information, like how we're doing, what you'd like to see. So, a great place to start is just to contact our office.
Thanks, Butch. The next one is for Terry. What is AIECA?
They may have misheard me. It is IICA. IICA stands for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. It's a sub-body of the Organization of American States, and they go by the acronym of IECA, but the initials are actually IICA. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. I think the next two questions are maybe Butch and Mike, but I'll read the first one. They're both from Marvin Hokema. Are live dairy cattle exports to Canada or Mexico available in market news?
I'll take the first one here. We do report a live dairy export number to Mexico, but no prices. It's just a volume of trade, and we report that out of our office in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Okay, next question is, how are dairy slaughter animals positively identified for dairy? For instance, sometimes dairy crossbreds in late lactation sold for slaughter can have the appearance of a beef breed. Are they traced by premise, etc.?
I think that I'm trying to figure out how to best answer that. We don't really see identification. You know, when we're covering, he's talking about if we're covering like slaughter cow auctions, we don't flag cows by dairy or beef. We flag them by percent lean typically. And so the leaner cows are typically the dairy cows. I'm probably not doing a very good job at answering the question. I'm going to ask Jim or Russ if they have some additional input there on how we handle that.
Mike, I can take that. Some of the identification, if it is going truly back into a dairy herd, is going to be labeled as Holstein dairy replacements on our reports. Cows that are entering into the meat industry are not going to be labeled by breed. It would just purely be on the grade specifications, like Mike said.
Okay, perfect. This is a question from Ken Lovett. Would love to see a single source at AMS that combines global prices for feed, grain, and livestock so that I can have a consistent data set. Could that be a part of the product?
Well, that's a wide open end, you know, unicorn, I think. I'm not sure, Jason, if we've thought that far ahead about also including global sources, but I think we'd have to really make sure that some data that we're confident in.
Yeah, I mean, to really answer that, at least for me, I would kind of want to know if you have some specific examples you're talking about. But right now we're simply focusing on getting anything that we're currently doing into the new system. But as Butch mentioned, we're always looking to expand or looking to see any information that we might be missing that could fit into that puzzle. So we would definitely be interested in if you have some examples of the data you're talking about. If you wanted to provide that to us, we could definitely look into it and get you a more detailed answer for sure.
Thank you, Jason. This next question I think is for Lakeisha. It's from Shale Shadam. Where regional reports are being nationalized, will a historical national series be provided? If so, how far back will the data be available?
This is kind of a case-by-case question. I can't answer every single situation based on this. Yes, we're going to try to provide historical data where we can on a national level. As far as how back it goes, I don't know. It won't be feasible in all instances to be able to provide all of that back data or for long periods of time. But we're going to try to provide as much as we can on several of those as we can. So if there's something more you want to talk about in future, I'm happy to touch base with you. Right now we're just kind of early stages, as this won't be effective till later, but happy to talk with you more one-on-one.
Ms. Lakeisha, I think this other question here is for you as well. From Lee McLamory, will we ever see weekly poultry export sales or shipments similar to what we get weekly from FAS for pork and beef?
Well, we kind of do different things. FAS, tracks everything. They use a different system and different information sets to track all the exports and imports, leaving and coming into the country. Whereas with AMS, I mean, what we're looking to do is show pricing information and data. We have just a few pricing series at present for export on poultry and eggs. In future, we're trying to build some of those reports so that we can show some of that pricing information and data for the spot marketplace. Not so much show large quantities and volumes, just because FAS already provides that information.
If I could add on to that, Lori, the beef and pork export report that FAS is currently doing, there's a mandate that requires that information be reported. So those companies need to provide that information to FAS, that volume information. It would only happen if there was an addition to that mandate to include poultry, that FAS would report that information likely.
Thanks, Mike and Lakeisha. I think, Mike, I'm going to throw this one back to you too. This is from Dan Manternock. With so many hog packers owning captive supplies of finished hogs, are you still confident your cash hog price collection is a representative sample of the actual cash hog market?
Well, that's kind of a trick question, I would say. As for those of you who don't know, the negotiated hog market is probably less than 2% of the total supply. The industry seems to be confident with that. I mean, I don't think anybody likes it particularly, but nobody seems to be making vast changes to try to generate more negotiated market activity. Through the LMR program, we are collecting 97% of all hogs slaughtered. We're collecting data on not just negotiated, but also for the other purchase types. But we do agree that market is extremely thin. I don't know that, you know, I'm not sure if confident is the right word, but it's something that the industry seems to be tolerant of. I think there's been more emphasis on, you know, pricing formulas off of the meat side than the live price. But again, we don't have that number particularly as well. We are looking at doing more, you know, comprehensive prices. You know, if you want to know what the value of the industry is, you know, you look at the prior day slaughter information, which has all the purchase types together. And there's been other areas, like I've mentioned, where we have looked at combining purchase types together to create a more of a comprehensive value of that commodity complex.
Excuse me. Thanks, Mike. This question was in the chat window from Becky Kinder. Since nothing was specifically reported on grain marketing news, will that all remain the same?
Well, we've already made those changes when that transition to Mars that happened here in the last year, I believe. Russ, do you have any highlights there you'd like to share on that?
Not really, Mike. That transition happened last August. We still have Feedstuffs coming, but Jason could give a better timeline in those areas, but pretty much all grain has been transitioned.
Yeah, the Feedstuffs as well as the bioenergy, which has some grain information, should be moving out to prod here in the next probably 60 days. Not all of the historical grain information has been brought over to the new system. So if that's part of what you're questioning, we do have ways to provide that matched up data while we're transitioning it. But as far as the day-to-day data being released right now, it's all coming out of the newer system.
One of the next questions is contact info for Jason. In just a second, I'll put the slide back up with the email addresses for all of us, but you can also find our contact information on the AMS website, as well as these slides will be available on the NASS website, and you will be able to see them there. So the next question, I think we have time. I previously had access to Colorado region level weekly commodity prices by quality grade, specifically for alfalfa and all hay through AMS custom reports. Well, I have access to this data going forward with My Market News and Mars, and this was from Bill Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not able to locate that, when Lori puts the information back up, you can send me a quick email and we could show that to you. But all of our hay pricing is in the new system and is available regularly through the report, through the data interface, and also through the API.
So we've gotten quite a few more questions in here. I don't know that we will have time. We only have about 5 minutes left. But feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions, and I am keeping track of these questions, so we will provide answers to all of these after the meeting closes. Lakeisha, will we ever see weekly? Oh, never mind, just kidding. We already did that one. From Dan, we did that one.
There was a follow-up question there from Dan, Lori. What percentage of carcass price trade is being reported compared to the 2% live hog pricing? You know, that's a number that that we don't know. When a packer reports their formula purchases to us, it's just marked as swine or pork market formula purchase. It doesn't differentiate with whether it's priced off of a live hog price or off of the meat price. That's currently not a requirement. That's something that that has been talked about as they have as National Pork Producers Council has looked at changes they would like to see going forward in the next reauthorization. That's something that they initially asked for. They haven't really come to agreement, I think, with the other trade association representing the packers on how to make that possible. So currently that's not a requirement. So we would not have that information.
I'd like to just add to that, Mike. If you're looking for a purchase type breakdown by percentage, you can find that on the weekly 214 report, which is the weekly purchase report. And it'll give you a breakdown of all of the different purchase types on a weekly basis. And then you can look on an annual basis if you run it as well.
Lakeisha, this is from William Tajero. Are all poultry and egg information voluntary? How does it impact the census if not mandatory?
Yes, all of our poultry and egg reporting at Market News is voluntary at this time. As far as how it impacts the census, I'm not really sure what your question is pertaining to exactly.
The last question in the Q&A I think we can get to, and then if there's any follow-up questions, we will definitely get to those after the meeting ends. So this one is from Don C. On beef exports, we have weekly exports within the comprehensive cutout report. We have the weekly export sales and shipments. The weekly reports don't correlate with each other, and none of the weekly reports correlate back to the monthly export totals. With so much contradiction, is good information being reported?
Well, that's a good question. It's kind of hard to answer because we're getting data from different sources here. The weekly exports within the comprehensive beef cutout is reported to us from those packers that are part of the livestock mandatory reporting program. Weekly export sales is the information provided to FAS. It's just a different data set. And I think this, given the shortness of time, that probably warrants a follow-on conversation to help sort some of those differences out. I'm not going to be able to do it justice here in the short time we have left here. But Don, please reach out to us and let's have a conversation to sort that out.
Okay, with that, I think we are out of time. I would like to thank everyone for attending this AMS breakout session and all of our panelists. We all appreciate your time and your questions, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I think Lakia is going to put up in the chat window the breakout sessions coming up at 2 o'clock if you're interested.
They're already there, Lori.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right, Lakia, I'll turn it back to you.
That is it for today. I will go ahead and close out this session, and hopefully you can join us at one of our breakouts at 2 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.